When the young mechanic showed him the tank part, the 64-year-old repair shop owner said, "This is from M1 Abrams. I used to operate one just like this." That moment changed everyone's life. Frank Wilson was 64 years old and had spent the last 15 years at his small repair shop in Bakersfield. His customers trusted him, his young apprentices loved him, but nobody knew who he really was. Frank had never talked about the military. He had never mentioned the Desert War, Tank Command, or that unforgettable day at 73 Easting, until his 22-year-old apprentice Kevin found an old M1 Abrams tank part and brought it to him. When Frank looked at that part, 30 years of silence came to an end. Because he had served as a commander in the Gulf War's most famous tank battle. Welcome to the last stand. Do you have Gulf War veterans in your family? Share their experiences in the comments. Frank Wilson's repair shop was located on the outskirts of Bakersfield, small but organized. The Wilson's Auto Repair sign had been in the same place for 15 years. The paint was faded, the edges rusted, but it was still solid, just like Frank. Frank came to work at exactly 7 every morning. He would open the door, turn on the lights, turn on the radio. But he never listened to news, he listened to music. Because sometimes there were war reports in the news. Customers trusted him because Frank was an honest man. When he said, "This repair will cost $300, that's what it cost. Not a penny more. His closest helper was Kevin. 22 years old, enthusiastic, eager to learn. Frank loved him like a son, because Frank himself had never had children. "Why did you never get married, boss?" Kevin had asked once. Frank had stopped while washing his hands, remained silent for a long time. Some things happened, he had said only. Kevin had noticed that Frank stayed at the repair shop until late hours. Sometimes he would work until 8 or 9 in the evening. "Boss, why do you stay so late?" he had asked. "Nothing to do at home," Frank had said, but the real reason was different. When Frank was alone at home, he would have nightmares. Tank sounds, explosion sounds, and the worst, Young's final scream. That's why he tried to tire himself out so he would sleep deeply at night. Sometimes Kevin would see Frank's hands shaking, especially when working with tools that made metal sounds. Kevin began to notice Frank's strange habits. When Frank came to work in the morning, he always followed the same routine. First, he would check around the repair shop, as if searching for enemies. When he heard helicopter sounds, he would lift his head and track where the sound was coming from. A tense expression would appear on his face. The strangest part was, when working with metal parts, he would sometimes stop and turn the part in his hand. A distant look would appear in his eyes. "Boss, what are you thinking?" Kevin would ask. "Nothing," Frank would say. But Kevin knew he was lying. Frank was also very organized. Every tool was in its place. This seemed like a habit from the military. That Monday morning, when Kevin came excitedly with a metal part in his hand, Frank thought a normal day was beginning. "Boss, look what I found." The old man at the junkyard said tank part. "Do you think it's real?" When Frank looked at the part, the world collapsed on him. That part wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a ghost from Frank's past. His hands began to shake. His heart started beating fast. 30 years ago, he had handled the same part thousands of times. "This is from M1 Abrams," Frank said, his voice hoarse. Kevin was surprised. "How do you know, boss?" Frank turned the part in his hand. He knew every line, every detail. "I used to operate one just like this." The moment he said that sentence, 30 years of walls had collapsed. Kevin looked in amazement. "What do you mean, boss? Did you operate tanks?" Frank put the part on the table. His hands were still shaking. He sat down, put his head between his hands. "Gulf War," Frank said. 1991. Kevin's mouth fell open. "Were you a tank commander?" Frank lifted his head. His eyes were filled with tears. 6 months. During Desert Storm operation. "Boss, why didn't you ever tell me?" Frank took a deep breath. "Because I don't want to remember those days, Kevin, because bad things happened there." "What kind of bad things?" Frank stood up, walked to the window. He watched outside, but was actually seeing 30 years ago. "People died, Kevin, and some died because of me." The next day, Kevin started asking questions again. Frank spoke more openly this time. "Where was the biggest battle, boss?" 73 Easting, Frank said. There was deep pain in his voice. What happened that day? Frank remained silent for a long time. Then he began to tell. February 26, 1991. Early morning hours. I was staff sergeant. I was responsible for 4 M1 Abrams tanks. Frank's voice was trembling. Private Young was also my responsibility. Who was Young? A 19-year-old kid from Alabama. His mother loved him very much. She would send letters. Frank began to cry. Young would show me his mother's photo every time he got a letter. Sergeant Wilson, do you know what my mom says? He would say. Kevin listened quietly. Thank you for protecting him, his mother would say. And I couldn't protect him. Frank continued. That morning we got intelligence. Iraqi Republican Guard tanks were 15 kilometers ahead. What did you do? We planned. I gave reconnaissance mission. Young's tank would go forward. Frank shook his head. I sent him there, Kevin. I sent him to death. How did he die? Frank took a deep breath. Sabot round from a T-72 tank. Direct hit. Young's tank caught fire instantly. Frank's voice broke. I heard his scream on the radio. Help me, Sergeant Wilson, he was shouting. Did you go to help? Of course, but it was too late. The tank was burning. We couldn't get Young out. Frank completely broke down. 30 years of pain was pouring out. Boss, Kevin said gently, this wasn't your fault. It was my fault. Frank shouted. I was the commander. I sent him there. Frank sat on the floor, began to cry. Young was 19 years old, Kevin. He hadn't lived yet. He had a girlfriend. They were going to get married. You couldn't have known. I should have known. What good is a commander if he doesn't know? Frank covered his face with his hands. For 30 years I've been hearing Young's voice. Help me, Sergeant Wilson. The same nightmare every night. Kevin approached Frank, touched his shoulder. Boss, maybe the truth is different. What do you mean? Maybe you're magnifying your mistakes. Maybe nobody else could have saved Young in that situation. Frank looked at Kevin. How do you know this? I don't know. But punishing yourself for 30 years is too long. That night, Kevin went home and began internet research. He typed 73 Easting Battle Private Young into Google. Many articles came up. Kevin read until morning. The next day, he approached Frank excitedly. Boss, I found very important things. Frank looked reluctantly. What did you find? There are articles about Private Young. And you're mentioned too. Frank looked at the computer screen. For the first time, he was seeing what was written about that war. It says here that Young died as a hero, and you're praised as his commander. Frank continued reading. Then a sentence caught his attention. Thanks to Staff Sergeant Wilson's leadership, the platoon completed the mission with minimal casualties. What does minimal casualties mean, Kevin? Few losses, boss. You saved the others. Kevin had gone to Veterans Affairs. He had found contact information for Frank's former tank driver, Johnson. Boss, I found Johnson. Frank panicked. Kevin, what did you do? Calm down, boss. You need to talk to him. I haven't talked for 30 years. What will I say now? You'll learn the truth. Kevin dialed the phone. Johnson answered. Johnson, this is Kevin. I'm with Frank Wilson. The phone was silent for a while. Then Johnson spoke. Is Frank there? I've been looking for him for 30 years. Frank took the phone. His hand was shaking. Johnson, this is Frank. Frank, buddy, where are you? You've been missing for 30 years. Johnson, Frank said, crying. Young's death was my fault. The phone was silent for a while. Then Johnson spoke. Frank, are you crazy? You were our hero. What do you mean? That day you destroyed 23 enemy tanks. You saved the whole platoon. Frank was surprised. But Young died as a hero, Frank. And you're not responsible for his death. Johnson continued. That day, there was intelligence failure. The Iraqis had taken hidden positions. None of us could have known. Frank began to cry. I've been blaming myself for 30 years. Frank, I talked to Young's family. They're looking for you. They see you as a hero. Are you telling the truth? Of course. Haven't you read Young's last letter? What letter? The letter he wrote to his mother the day before he died. He talks about you. Frank couldn't breathe. What does it say? It says, my commander Sergeant Wilson protects me. He's a real leader. I love him." Frank dropped the phone, fell to the floor, began to sob. The next day, Kevin took Frank to the Veterans Affairs office. The female officer greeted them. "How can I help you?" "I'm a Gulf War veteran," Frank said. "Staff Sergeant Frank Wilson." The woman looked at her computer. "Oh, Sergeant Wilson, we've been waiting for you." "Waiting for me?" "Yes, you have unclaimed decorations for 30 years. Frank was surprised. "What decorations?" "Bronze Star Medal with V device, for outstanding leadership under fire." Frank's knees shook. Kevin held him. "Bronze Star?" "Yes, and there's also Purple Heart. You were wounded while trying to save Young." Frank remembered. That day when he ran to Young's tank, a shrapnel piece had pierced his arm. But he hadn't cared. I didn't know about these. The office has prepared your medals. They want to hold a ceremony." The female officer gave Frank an envelope. "This also came from Young's family. They've been looking for your address for 20 years. Frank opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter from Young's mother. "Dear Sergeant Wilson, we lost our son Michael 30 years ago, but we never forgot you. Michael mentioned you in his last letter. He wrote that he loved you very much, that he trusted you. We don't blame you for Michael's death. He died as a hero for his country, and you became our pride as his commander. We've been looking for you for 30 years, to thank you. For protecting Michael. For saving the other boys in the platoon. Michael's room is still the same. Your platoon's photo hangs on the wall. We miss you very much. Please call us. We want to see you very much. With our love, Mary and Robert Young." As Frank read the letter, tears dripped onto the paper. 30 years of pain was slowly beginning to heal. Frank dialed the phone with trembling hands. Young's mother, Mary, answered. "Mrs. Young, this is Frank Wilson. Sergeant Wilson." The phone was silent for a while. Then Mary began to cry. Frank, we've been looking for you for 30 years. Mrs. Young, I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect Michael." "Frank, stop. You protected Michael. It says so in his last letter." "Sergeant Wilson protects me," he says. Frank began to cry. "But he died. He died as a hero, Frank, and you were his hero." Mary continued. "Frank, come to Michael's room. I'll show you his photos. I'll read you the letters he talked about you." I can't come. I'm too ashamed." "Frank, 30 years is enough. Michael is restless in his grave. If you don't come, he can't find peace." These words affected Frank deeply. "Do you really think so?" "Of course, Frank. You were his big brother. You were a father to him." 2 weeks later, Frank and Kevin went to Alabama. Young's family met them at the airport. Mary Young ran and hugged Frank as soon as she saw him. "Frank, my son Frank." Frank began to cry. "Mrs. Young, I'm so sorry." "Shh, Frank, don't be sad. You're our hero." Young's father, Robert, also hugged Frank. "Sergeant Wilson, welcome to our home." At home, Young's room had remained the same for 30 years. The platoon photo hung on the wall. Frank saw himself, young, strong, proud. Mary showed him Young's letters. In every letter, he mentioned Sergeant Wilson. "Sergeant Wilson taught me a new song. Sergeant Wilson is teaching me to drive a tank. Sergeant Wilson is a real leader." Frank's tears wouldn't stop as he read the letters. The next day, they went to Young's grave. The tombstone read, "Private Michael Young, beloved son, American hero, Gulf War veteran 1970-1991. Frank knelt in front of the grave. "Michael, this is Sergeant Wilson. I couldn't come for 30 years. I'm so sorry." Frank spoke crying. "I couldn't protect you, Michael. You were my responsibility. I failed." At that moment, the wind blew. Mary touched Frank's shoulder. "Frank, Michael hears you, and he forgives you." Frank caressed the tombstone. "I'll never forget you, Michael." Frank planted a small American flag he took from his pocket at the head of the grave. "Goodbye, soldier. Rest in peace." At that moment, Frank felt the 30-year burden lift from his shoulders. A month later, Veterans Affairs organized a big ceremony. 200 people attended. Young's family, Johnson, and other tank crew members, Frank's customers, Kevin. The hall was decorated with American flags. The military band was playing. When the ceremony began, the commander spoke. "Today we're conducting an honor restoration 30 years late. Staff Sergeant Frank Wilson showed extraordinary heroism in the 1991 Gulf War." When Frank went on stage, he received a standing ovation. His hands were shaking. Sergeant Wilson destroyed 23 enemy tanks in the 73 Easting Battle. He saved his platoon, and he was wounded while trying to save Private Young. The commander pinned the Bronze Star Medal on Frank's chest. For heroic service in combat operations, Frank began to cry. 200 people were giving him a standing ovation. Young's mother Mary came on stage, hugged Frank. "Michael is proud, Frank. You became our hero." Frank went to the microphone. 30 years ago, I lost a kid, Private Michael Young. He was my responsibility." The hall became silent. For 30 years, I blamed myself. But today, I learned that Michael died as a hero, and I'm proud to have been his commander. Frank showed his medal. "This medal isn't just mine. It's also Michael Young's, and all the heroes who fought at 73 Easting." The hall thundered with applause. Everyone was crying. After the ceremony, Frank completely changed. He no longer hid his past. He hung his Bronze Star Medal in his repair shop. He also put Young's photo, with never forgotten inscription. When customers learned that Frank was a Gulf War veteran, they began to respect him more. "Thank you for your service," they would say. Frank now proudly replied, "It was my honor to serve." Kevin was very proud. "Boss, you're a real hero." "No, Kevin. The hero was Michael Young. I was just his commander." Every day, Frank would look at Young's photo and say, "Good morning, soldier." After Frank's story spread, other veterans began coming to him too. He listened to young soldiers experiencing PTSD, helped them. "I suffered for 30 years too," he would tell them. "But pain doesn't belong to you. If you share it, it gets lighter." Frank made his repair shop a veteran meeting place. They met once a week. He would tell Young's story, give hope to other veterans. "Heroes sometimes fall, but they always get back up," he would say. Frank Wilson, at age 64, broke his 30-year silence, and he learned that he really was a hero. He always was. If you enjoyed these powerful stories, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. These stories are shared daily. Frank still operates his repair shop in Bakersfield today. But now, he doesn't just repair cars, he repairs broken hearts too. His Bronze Star Medal hangs on the wall of his repair shop. Next to it is Young's photo and "A Hero Never Forgotten" inscription. Every morning when he comes to work, he looks at Young's photo and says, "Good morning, Michael. Another day to make you proud." Kevin now learns not just mechanics but life lessons too. "Boss," he says, "you taught me courage." "No, Kevin," Frank says. "Courage came from Michael. He taught me to be strong even 30 years later." And other Gulf War veterans continue coming to Frank, because they know he's not just a mechanic. He's someone who understands them, someone who can share their pain. Young's memory will live forever in the repair shop. And Frank's story will continue to give hope to other veterans, because real heroes sometimes fall, but they always get back up. And sometimes, even 30 years later, their story becomes a light for others. Frank Wilson now knows. He is a hero. Michael Young's hero. And that's enough for him.